Okay. All right. Rusty, what racing and motorsports have you participated in throughout your life?
Well, as a kid, I raced go-karts for a few years. Um, I kind of grew, yeah, really, at a really young age, I watched my dad. I would go with my dad um, when he was running Grand National West, which is the equivalent of K&N this year, although it was back then it was the equivalent of what is Sprint Cup today. So, but it was the Western Division, which kind of got me interested in racing. So, ran go-karts as a kid. Um, when I graduated out of high school, I started running stock cars out here at Saugus Speedway and progressed up through um, basically up to late models, which back then was called Sportsman Division, um, and then did some asphalt IMC and modifieds out here, and then that was kind of it for a long time, and then kind of got back into it with a friend. I'm not racing, but helping him with his son, who's racing dirt modifieds out here in Central California, and that's kind of where we're at now.
Awesome. So yeah, you certainly have a very diverse background in very esteemed levels of racing, so to speak. Then, correct?
I've been, I've either been a part of it or been in it myself for quite a while.
Okay. Awesome. So, and over those time periods, in what ways have you seen technology influencing motorsports?
I would say, well, early on, especially when I was doing most of my racing, there really wasn't technology as it is today.
Sure, absolutely.
There were definitely tricks, and there was definitely a certain amount of automotive technology. Um, but you look at it today, and today there's a lot of that certainly that automotive technology has advanced quite a bit as more people get involved that are from different walks of life as opposed to backyard mechanics. Um, but you also see, obviously you see a lot of automotive engineering, especially at the higher ranks in Sprint Cup and Formula One and IndyCar, where they use engineering more than they use chassis tuning. Um, and at even at the lower levels, we're using different types of uh, computer technology to help us along the way. At our level, obviously, it's not as prevalent, other than organization. Organization is where we can utilize the computer technology the most.
Sure, and that makes total sense. In some regards, having it as an assistant, or does it benefit the fact that your race team can improve, the performance and the times? Does technology help you guys achieve that status?
Absolutely. Just in using primitive programs to kind of start the organization on its own, start organizing thoughts and actions and kind of keeping track of them. It definitely helps. And then, of course, as we find tools along the way that help move that forward or make it easier, or just find a way to get everything in one box, it definitely becomes a lot easier for guys like me.
Sure. Okay. So I do know that one of the tools you have found along the way is competitive edge racing software. So how has competitive edge racing software specifically helped the team that you assist with?
What we've done, we started with it the beginning of 2013 as a way to help our note-taking process. And quite honestly, when I was looking, I was really primarily looking for that, just organizing how we take notes at the track and away from the track and keep track of setups and changes that we make. Um, and it became a real bonus when we started adding in or looking at the maintenance track of what's working, not only on the car itself, but what components are doing, say, when we get them and during the process. So it really gives us an idea of what's working and what isn't, and just the organization of it, being able um, to take the notes. It's pretty easy to write, program in the setups that we're using, and it'll save those for us so that we don't keep doing redundant work, and then adding in our thoughts and changes and results, and then factoring in, it's got we can work with different shocks and see what shock packages are working, and see it definitely helps tell us which shocks are doing what, and also the tires. Keeping track of what tires look like when we buy them versus once we inflate them, and then after, say, 1 or 2 sessions, where they stack up and how long they're being used and how long they're good for and what their performance is. Things along those lines are just it's huge, because now it's all in one place, and we can print it out, put it in a binder for nice, easy access when we're at the track. But it's on the computer as well, so we can bring it up and actually sort by what we want. And in our particular case, we run dirt modified, so we tend to sort it by the track conditions in the main events. And so we'll look at which track conditions match what we think is coming up, and particularly look at the track that we're at, which is another huge thing. We're able to keep track of all the different tracks we go to, and we can sort by tracks and time of year, all kinds of sorts, just to look at different setups or get different ideas and see what works.
Sure. And as I say, you stress a lot about the note-taking aspect of things, and just being able to collect all that data, keep it in one place. And competitive edge racing software certainly allows you to do that. Do you think it's a fairly easy program to utilize as far as a learning curve? I mean, you've been in the business a while, but you've also adapted to this technology and certainly found that it is very beneficial to taking notes and achieving success in any motorsport. So do you think that it's capable of being learned easy?
It definitely was really easy for me to learn. I have kind of a computer background. I'm pretty good in Excel and organizational type programs. So this was very familiar to me. I kind of understand. With that kind of background, you kind of understand how this program works and what it does, and that helps out a lot. But for someone who doesn't, putting the notes in was pretty easy. Finding the different, getting to the right tabs to, hey, we're working on an event or the particular race night, or we're working in the garage and here's a setup we're trying, or anything like that. It was pretty easy to do, even to the point where when we started working with, say, tires, and started figuring out what we want, how we want to approach tires and keeping track of the tires, getting those inventoried and on the computer, and then being able to access them on any given night. It's actually fairly simple to use. It's really easy, very user-friendly.
Wonderful. Certainly. And in that regard, being easy to use, then, as you've said, stressing the note-taking, you are obviously a very big advocate for note-taking. How well has note-taking, improved your team?
Well, we've been running modifieds this is our 4th year in modified. Our driver got in modified. His first time he was 15 years old. He just turned 18. So part of it is his maturing. Part of it is myself and everyone else on the crew kind of maturing with the car. And for the first couple of years, we were basically also rans. We'd have a good night every now and then, but for the most part, we were, on a 15-car show, we were running anywhere from 8 to 12. Um, since we started taking notes, keeping track of what works, we've gone to basically being a top 5 car and closing in on always being, near the front, always being a contender to win. We have been for the past year or so in contention to win, but always just a little bit off, and we're getting so close to that. And a lot of that is just learning what the notes are telling us. One of the big things that we noticed when we were looking at notes was we had a starting position that we thought was good, and we always found ourselves kind of progressing as the night goes to a certain point, and we'd always get to a stopping position. This is where we ended up at the end of the night. And, we look at that over a period of, 3 or 4 events, and you go, well, why don't we just start where we ended and see where we go from there? Well, we did that, and that literally is what moved us from being a top 10 car to a top 5 car. And we're in the process of kind of doing the same thing again. We see that we started at a certain point, and we're moving in. Now we can move in different directions, and we're figuring out which ones work best for us. So that's what note taking does for you. Is you as a racer or a crew chief or anything involved in racing, if you've been around it long enough, you have an idea of what works. And there are some guys that just have a knack for knowing what to do without having to take notes or do whatever. But for those of us that don't have that extraordinary knack of setup, being able to take notes and look back on them and go, you know what, it works better if we do this because this didn't work. And sometimes from event to event, you forget that, and with notes, it's down in writing, and you've told yourself. It's like writing a Post-it. Hey, this worked. Try it again. So.
Absolutely, and in that case, it's an electronic Post-it that, building upon the success, a Post-it note upon a Post-it note eventually puts you, 3,000 pages ahead in that regard, as well as, 3 or 4 positions on the track, in the winner's circle, consistently in winner's circle, achieving higher levels of success in the racing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's what we found was, we knew that we were learning things with the car before we started really taking notes on we tried, but we couldn't accumulate the notes. But we knew we were learning things on the car. Of course, we knew that our driver was young and he was learning how to drive the car. What's happened is when we started taking notes and utilizing the information that we have, it puts us in a different status of learning. Now we're learning different things. We're learning new things. We're learning that, hey, we don't need to keep adjusting this. Start it here. Let's start adjusting this. That's what's moving. We find that after maybe over a 2-month period, we're picking up a tenth to a tenth and a half on the track. It makes you that much better because you're fine tuning things. You're learning. You start by taking bigger steps, and then the smaller steps are what really move you along. So
sure, it's all in the details. All in the details. Yeah. Well, Rusty, I greatly appreciate your time. Thank you for this wonderful interview. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Rusty Parr, racing enthusiast, crew chief, passionate about the sport. Thank you, Rusty.
Sure, you bet.